You're listening to the Digital Deep Dive, where we tackle the newest trends, strategies, and pain points shaping growth across the digital landscape. From Amazon and D2C to international expansion, join our host and e-commerce leaders across multiple industries for in-depth discussions on how to maximize your brands in the digital arena. Now, here's your host, Aaron Conant.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Digital Deep Dive podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Conant, and today we're going to talk about retail media measurement. It was either that or incrementality, and Meghan Corroon here is the guest today, has graciously given us an hour or so of her time to jump on. But this has been part of a lot of conversations recently, as I think everybody knows. It's popping up, webinars. I've done a couple podcast episodes on it, and retail media. And nobody really knows what to do with it. And a lot of that is just around the measurement side, what's working, what's not. And it's different than years past where people were just getting money thrown at them and just saying, hey, just go spend it. Now it's, hey, what's working, what's not. Budgets are being crunched. Profitability is huge. And so Meghan here is just an expert in this space. And we got connected from a couple different brands and then had a fantastic conversation. I'm like, you have to jump on the podcast. And she said, yes. So, but Meghan, I'll kick it over to you. If you want to give a little background on yourself and Clerdata, that would be awesome.
Yeah, great. Thanks so much. It's exciting to be on here on this rainy Thursday morning and getting into the geeky niche world of incremental retail media measurement. But yeah, it is coming up a lot, left, right, and center. So I was at grocery shop just last week, and I'll get more into those stories, but it was the topic, like in Vegas with all the brands asking about it. So yeah, my background is not from CPG, is not from marketing, is actually from the university setting. So I came out of academia at University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill here in North Carolina, and really spent a career, with a big group of data scientists pushing forward ways to measure really hard, gnarly questions. So we would get thrown from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation or for different governments around the world, sort of, if I put money into this thing and I want to achieve this outcome, was it worth the money? Was it worth the dollar that I spent? And so we spent 15 years, the CTO of our company, myself, Clerdata, and just trying to tackle these questions. And so we did it in wild places all around the world with crazy data sets and lots of different people at the table. And so we took all that, harnessed all that sort of data science, methodological innovation, enhanced computing power, which I would be happy to get into later because that's an exciting thing in this particular time and moment for us. And applied it to one fundamental question that we solve for, which is how to holistically measure incremental ROI across all the levers that these companies are pulling. So that includes retail media, first and foremost, all the marketing levers and trade levers. And so how to look at that from a consumer point of view, not from a data silo point of view or who owns what P&L point of view, but like really, I'm a mom of 2 kids, and like, how does Meghan buy things and make a decision in a moment, right, to buy things for her household? And so really modeling, using advanced data science to model from a consumer, holistic, real world perspective. Yeah, so that's what we do at Clerdata.
Awesome. So there's going to be like 500 questions, and then,
okay.
Because this is a spot that a lot of people have been trying to solve for a long time. But I think you hit on it, which is there was a siloed approach, right? We need to solve for this, then we need to solve for this, and then we need to solve for this, and then we're going to take it and we're going to see what happens. But would love to hear, like, what is the approach? Because you're going beyond just traditional retail media. You're looking at incrementality across the board. Is that right?
Across the board, yeah. So
and incrementality, huge buzzword, by the way. Incrementality, huge buzzword.
Yeah, and I'm not a fan. I know you're not a fan of buzzwords either. But just really, we have a a leader in the thought space, a leader at Duracell actually had phrased it to me this way, which was, how do we win the jump ball, right? So how do we win the jump ball in each moment? And I'm not super sporty. I have to say, I have to apologize. I'm not really, really into sports, but my husband is. But I loved that analogy because it was like in each moment, what is the thing or set of a couple things that makes a consumer decide they want your product and not an alternative product? And so that the pressure on incremental sales, new sales you would not have won otherwise, right? You're spending money, you need it to count. And like you referenced at the top of the podcast, we're in a kind of crazy economic period. Yesterday, my CTO and I, he's an economist, we were looking at consumer spending data revisions, which is really a detailed niche that I won't go into because it'll bore everyone. But it was revised significantly down for Q2 this year, which means people are just spending less money. And so that is a sort of real world effect that we're seeing happening right now. And so because of that, brands have to really care a lot more about incrementality versus just maintaining base sales in a strong economy.
Yeah, and I love that, like winning the jump ball. But you're right. I mean, I was just chatting with this, I think on the previous podcast with Lauren over at Digital Shelf Institute, was around the same trends that, because I get a real time with brands, right? It's like they're kind of, and it seems like in January, February, people ran out of money. And then right around the end of Q2 and the beginning of Q3, they're starting to run out of credit.
Yeah.
Right. So we go to this time of huge savings to, the most ever, to now the highest credit card debt. And now it's really slowing down. And that means they're going to be buying fewer products. And then how do you know what levers to pull to make sure that you are winning the jump ball? That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. And then meanwhile, right, the other side of that coin is our customers in CPG are getting faced, and you had talked about this on multiple podcasts, but this proliferation of crazy choices of where to spend their money. And this is where the retail media piece comes in, is additional pressure to just try to spend money and buy ads on more platforms across more retailers. And there's only so much money, Yeah,
it's FOMO. I mean, FOMO is, the fear of missing out is driving that, hey, do I have to be? And I was just, I was talking with Tom Logan over at Coley, and we're talking about, well, what about TikTok? And a lot of people are just throwing stuff out on TikTok just because they think they have to be there. Do you have to be there? Like, if you're not going all in, right, then probably don't be there. And a lot of people just want to know that. And that was one of the really cool things that when I was talking with you, is like, people just want to know. They need a source of truth. They need a source of data. They need something, and it doesn't have to be 100% accurate all of the time. They need something to help guide them on the decisions they're making as a whole. And I mean, I think, I'd love to hear like how do you approach these things with brands, right? And what are the platforms that you're investing in taking a look at? And then is there a priority? And this is probably going to be a lot CPG focused, right? And my guess is a year from now, it'll be CPG and fashion, and then we just keep layering on. But from that CPG perspective, like, what does that approach look like? How should people be thinking about where they're spending and how they're spending in that analysis of it?
Yeah. So we have, over 50 data integrations for a given customer usually. So there's a lot of levers that people are pulling across retail media. TikTok is a hot one that we measure very regularly for folks. All the different social media platforms, paid and owned or organic, depending on how into the phrasing you are. What I really take customers in the beginning, we set it all up custom in terms of where their risk stacks are. So we really talk about not trying to boil the ocean. If you hear that term a lot with analysis paralysis of, we don't want to answer every interesting question that could be answered. It's a powerful, one customer calls the algorithm we have a Ferrari, right? And so you have this Ferrari, you can do a lot with it. But where I see a breakdown and where is the most opportunity and the most risk is just, can you act on a new disruptive, non-siloed form of insight? So if you get these answers, what decisions can be driven by them. We know we can do it from a technical perspective, but how is your organization set up in order to get out of silos? Because that's something that's happening right now in CPG is everyone is trying to find a way to get out of silos and make better, centralized, effective, real-time decisions. And so we really talk about risk stacks, how much money and staff time are you allocating to these levers? So TikTok may be fascinating, but if you're allocating hardly any money and time to it, and you don't know what's working in all the other pieces of your strategy, like there are bigger fish to fry, if you will. So that's really, it's the promise of this and where companies will get eventually is very exciting. But we really start with core questions that are black box questions that if you don't know where all this money is going and its performance holistically, let's answer that question first. And then we'll move into sort of test and learn of new channels and more innovative, cool, edgier platforms that are coming out. And so that's usually how we shape our engagements is let's get the black box opened up. Let's get some solid, and there are always surprises, right? There's a lot of bloat in how CPG has been spending their marketing and trade envelopes.
And I think a lot of them, I think they know that.
Yeah.
But they just don't know where the bloat is.
Yep.
And they're afraid of shutting something off, especially right now, right? When we're thinking about numbers, we're thinking about Q4, we're thinking about earnings. And it's kind of like, I don't know if I want to shut that off because I don't know what the ripple effect is across everything else. And the interesting thing is sometimes you shut it off and nothing happens, right? I've had a lot of conversations around, like Amazon paid media. And I have some people like, they'll drop their paid media spend, they'll cut it by 80%, and they only see a 10% drop in sales.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, wait, what?
Yeah.
So
that's
net, when we're talking profitability, they come out ahead, even though top line is down. Overall profitability of the company is way, way, way up. Do you see that? Like how often do you get in there? This would be super curious. Like, how often do you get in there and you're like, whoa, like you're dropping cash over here and it's driving next to no sales. Does that happen?
It's happening almost every time.
I mean, it makes sense because, again, everybody's trying every platform.
Yeah.
And nobody has a measurement tool for making it work.
Yeah. So I'd say, our measurement is, remember, on incrementality. So that example you gave is the perfect example. We had an early, more mid-market size customer who said, I'm going to do a test. I'm going to do something, and then I'm going to try your platform and see if you're truly getting at incrementality, right? So they tested, first they had our platform show them where they weren't getting any incremental dollars from, and they had invested heavily in Meta for them, for their brand, right? We would say overinvested in that probably, given the other things they were doing. We said it was not driving very much incremental dollars for them, whereas they had some opportunities elsewhere where they should be increasing. They were under leveraging other tactics, right? Which is very common. So then they did a test to test us, right? This was maybe 3 years ago. I think we were doing this with them. They then moved forward, shut off all Meta spend for a financial quarter, which was a big risk for the company, I think. But they were already curious enough and like, oh my God, we could save this much money and reallocate it elsewhere, right? To these higher optimized channels. And they saw almost no difference in their sales outcomes. And it was that's a very painful way to measure incremental effectiveness, right? It's much better to have some statistical power behind you, but they weren't sure. They said, is the math right? Do we feel comfortable with this? So I mean, they've had 2 customers do that, and it always pencils out, and then they reallocate dollars.
Yeah, no, I can see it though, because there's been so many platforms step in and say that, right? And hey, we can solve this for you, and it's a giant black box, and hey, just trust us, and it's all smoke and mirrors. And so there's been a lot of people ahead of time that have kind of, I don't know, soured the taste for a lot of people out there.
Yeah.
And in the absence of that data collection and attribution tool, they just leave spend where it's at. Which begs another question around the agency side. So if I'm a paid search and social agent and you step in and are like, shut off Meta, like I see two sides of it. I see there's a chunk of people who freak out because you just shut off a revenue stream.
Yeah.
I see another set of people who are like, actually, I want to partner with you so you can help me drive right amount of in the correct sales, and I can be the best partner for the brands I'm working with.
Yeah. I'll give a storied example, and you know this world. We're outsiders. We're from a university setting, right? I don't care who wins or loses. My customer is the brand or family of brands, and that is who I work for. I don't work for marketing agencies, right? I mean, I partner with them. We collaborate with them every day. Some are awesome, right? And some are not. But we have learned over time that the best performing one, there's a correlation between how their performance is really running for a brand and how open they are to external independent measures of their performance. And so that's not new. That was the same for me in my previous world, traveling globally and working with all sorts of complex partnerships, right? That was my bread and butter work. So I'm very familiar with the dynamics at the table. It's just a new set of actors. But yeah, so we had an enterprise customer, very, very large customer. You would all know the name of this customer, right? We're working for one of their brands. They're a big family of brands, and we're doing our work. They found tons of marketing efficiency. I think it was like 35% marketing efficiency we delivered for them, which is bananas. I don't even use that number because it feels unbelievable, but there's a lot of area for optimization right now because the measurement's been bad. They had two marketing agencies, one agency of record and one who was doing a lot of other sort of performance paid media stuff for them. One of them was on every meeting, asking us great questions, kind of excited about the methodology, excited to learn, got us the data, access real quickly. The other one, well-known agency, which I won't mention, right? Agency of record for a massive CPG company, legal involved, doesn't want to give the data. Turns out they have to give the data. It's not their data, right? It's the family of brands data. We finally get the data. You go under the hood. Guess whose performance was better at the end of the day? Guess who was driving incremental sales for their customer at the end of the day? You know, I think at this point, this area of the industry begs for disruption. And we're here to sort of expose and be really clear about what is objective truth and what the science says is working or not untested assumptions or past beliefs or other people's business models that maybe need to be adapted and changed, I think, for the future. Because we're not going backwards in terms of data science. This is really just the start, I think, of a lot of illumination, I would like to call it, on what's really happening for a performance perspective.
Yeah, I think so, especially if I'm on the leadership side, because I can also see on the sales teams or on marketing teams, like, I mean, I'm a scientist, right? Like,
yeah,
you can get the data to tell you pretty much whatever story you want it to tell you by selecting the data you want to look at.
Yeah.
And where you're this impartial piece that comes in, like, you don't really care, right? And it's like, hey, this is the data. It's like, here are the results. Like,
yeah,
it doesn't matter to me if you believe it or not. This is just the reality of the situation. And we can either, help guide you on what to do next, or you can choose to, stick your head in the ground and pretend it's not real. But
yeah. And there's a lot of interesting stuff going on. You mentioned Amazon earlier, right? And so one exciting area is that Amazon ads and measuring their incremental halo effects on retail brick and mortar. So that's probably one of the most requested sort of cutting edge things that we do a lot.
Wait, are you able to do that?
Yes. We're doing that for customers right now. It's one of the top conversations.
Because anytime anybody hears halo effect with Amazon, it's just a gigantic eye roll. Right? Gigantic.
That's what we measure.
They've been saying that from like the AMG days back in like 2014, right? Where they're like, oh, look at, you spent, $100,000 and you got a 0.79 return on ad spend, but the halo effect has you a $5. Wait, no.
You're like, where does that come from? I know. So I think So I won't get too far into it, but we have a really advanced causal modeling framework is what underlies our product. It's really, very advanced. It's not what you're going to get from a management consulting group doing an MMA. It's several ticks higher rigor than that. But what it allows you to do is hold aside a lot more noise, and it allows you to measure things like Amazon halo effects. And it's interesting because those marketing firms, very cutthroat in the Amazon world, very scrappy, paid very much on how much ads they push for the most part. And what we've seen is I was so skeptical coming in, but again, unbiased, I have no financial conflict of interest with any of the marketing firms. So I don't really care at all what wins or loses. And then we started to see it varies quite a bit by company and by brand. But we did start to see if you just want Amazon to drive Amazon sales for CPG, it's almost never worth it. Let's be realistic, right? It just isn't. It doesn't pencil out. It's too expensive. Most of their revenues coming from retail. But then you start to add up the Kroger sales attributed to Amazon ads, the Albertson sales, directly, incrementally attributed. And you add that up and you're like, it's still a very powerful search engine, right? That's what it is. And so that's kind of the alternative exciting component is those marketing firms, of course, begin to be excited with us. But the next time we say something they're doing isn't working, then they're less excited by the news. So it's
we were friends.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's good news and bad news, right? But we just lay it out and you play it out is what
we're such good friends. I'm going to tell you when you're doing something wrong. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. So
we're either super good friends or great business partners.
Right. Exactly. We're into radical transparency. So this is it. This is the results. This is what we do.
And I love it because it's basically my personality, right? It's just how it is. And that part of it is being a scientist, right? And you have to be objective and you have to, they always say, hey, well, you have a hypothesis. You're trying to, prove the hypothesis. Kind of. I'm trying to figure out if the hypothesis was right or not. And if I prove that it's wrong, that's fine too. I got to an answer. Right. Exactly. But it's being objective as opposed to, hey, this is what I'm setting out to prove. I'm setting out to prove that Amazon has incrementality. Set out to prove that. I guarantee you can. Right. But that doesn't mean it's objective or it's right or it's accurate or true. So
exactly. Yeah. That's such, Aaron, I feel like you have that mindset so strongly, but that's the shift I'm seeing with the leadership in these companies is having to get out of competitive territorial silos, right? That they're all also in charge of this set of levers and this set of levers and come together and say, in a hard economy, and this is what leadership and C-suite wants and boards want.
Oh, 100%.
They're not messing around either. This is not,
especially right now.
Yeah. No, right now, it doesn't much matter what your little piece of the pie is. Everyone has to get in the boat and row in the direction of increased incremental growth. And to do that, you have to be a little thicker skinned and open and more scientific, like your perspective of it. Like, let's get curious. Let's not get so defensive about if a hypothesis is wrong or right. Let's get curious about, let me come up with a new hypothesis. That one was proven wrong. Okay, that allows me creativity to think of a new one. But not everyone has that mindset. So we tend to work with the companies that are more culturally aligned with that kind of mindset. Yeah.
And I do agree with you. Just as executive teams get more educated in this space, and at the same time, when profitability is one of the highest things. When money's flying everywhere, right? And it's like, okay, we just keep going. But now profitability and their education level. And also, I think in most cases, the digital marketers that are out there, in most cases, and I like to assume the best in people, like they want the best, but they want data. They don't want somebody in sales or somebody in IT or a random person, just saying, hey, I don't think that ad's working. We shouldn't do it. No. I think they're like, okay, well, prove it. And if you can, awesome. I'll spend it someplace else. I'm responsible for driving sales. Yeah. How can I do it? And, I think we just need to be like where we're at right now is like a tool, like what you have is to step in and say, hey, objectively, this is what you should be doing and not be doing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. And I think you had said this too. I think we were talking about the history of the digital, commerce, e-com space. And you were talking about, you've been in it for such a long time, but seeing the rise of that through COVID and so many new people coming into that space and stepping into that work. But it's still relatively new for a lot of people running. And in CPG, it's exceptionally new from a historical perspective, right? They're really focused on retail for the most part previously. So I think we're in a new world. We have a lot of new tech at our fingertips, and you have people trying to make sense of a stressful economy and a lot of choices. And so we mainly step in to try to be a very objective, rigorous, integrity-filled one center of truth to say, it doesn't have to be that complicated. Let the data, let the observable performance drive your decisions, and you don't have to worry so much about having the perfect hypothesis or whatever. Like test and learn. It's okay to be doing tests, spend a little money, fail a little bit, learn something, spend more money, change. Like that's a much better way to be, I think, in terms of growth.
Yeah, I always say like it's not just throwing stuff up against a wall and seeing what sticks. It is picking the wall that you want to throw stuff up against, picking what you want to throw up there and how much of it, and then throwing that up and then watching what happens. It's not just grabbing everything and throwing. It's too many variables, right? Like it's just,
it is.
Do it. But if you can do that step by step, and so there's a part of it that takes patience.
Yeah.
Right? And in today's world, not a lot of people have the patience, right? Everybody
wants it to go really fast.
Now, I want to dump $1 in and see what happens instantaneously, and then that guides me on my next dollar. Well, it's not necessarily how. It's not necessarily.
You gotta let it run a bit. Yeah, I mean, I think the big disruptive piece that we're doing, aside from incremental and halo effects, is just being in real time. And so traditionally, people have gotten some of these things measured with mixed marketing analysis and consultants coming in. And I talked to the head of omnichannel yesterday for a big CPG company after grocery shop, and he's super excited. He's really geeky. He's done like data science classes at Harvard. He's very smart, analytical thinking guy. And he's like, I wait 2 years to get a group of consultants to come and tell me about incremental lift from 2 years ago on Google spend. Yeah. And you're like, okay, you got to let things run. You're right. You can't move daily changing your, budget line items, but can you wait 2 years to find out what was selling the baby food? Like that's not functional. That's not worth $100K or $300K. That's just not. Like you can't act on that.
No.
So we're stepping into that void and saying, hey, quarterly or monthly, it's usually quarterly, right? Let's do a QBR, get all the refreshed insights, and you pivot and move and test things and change. But it's not, it's not a D2C site. It's a bigger ship that they're directing. And so they need to let things run. But 2 years is like a long time.
It's an eternity in e-com, right? It literally is an eternity right now.
Yeah, totally. So, yeah.
I used to laugh at, I went to back when I was on the brand side, a big Forrester conference. And the first year there's like, well, soon mobile's going to take over. And one of these, they always have a year of something. Like pretty soon we're going to have the year of mobile. And the next year they were like, apparently last year was a year of mobile and we completely missed it.
We missed it.
They're candid about it.
Our report came out after the year of mobile transpired.
Yeah. Like, the guy on stage is completely hilarious. I was like, hey, we totally missed it. Because stuff is moving that fast. By the time you try to put together research like that, it's gone. Like you spent your time researching something in the past. And you miss the here and now. You miss the here and now.
Yeah. I think it's focusing. It's back to those risk stacks, right? Of being like, let's not get every distracting, awesome tech gadget we can get, which there's a lot of them right now, right? It's AI, it's computing power, which I think is less sexy, but is, I think, going to be even more impactful or equally as impactful alongside AI. But it's one of those things where you're like, you guys don't, we always say this to customers, you don't know the answer to just the big line items, right? You don't know what's working across huge trade spend. You literally don't know with trade and marketing together.
But they haven't had the tool either. They haven't had the tool. I mean, I know you have.
Yeah,
tool,
no, I know,
right?
I know.
Which is why everybody's like, you have to talk to Meghan. You have to do something with her because she's awesome.
It's really busy right now. Yeah, it's very busy. It's exciting.
But they just haven't had the tool that they can trust, and they've tried different ones out. It's just when you literally just take a look at the data and you can see this is wrong, right?
It doesn't jive.
My whole back at the halo effect with Amazon on their AMG campaigns back in the day, like, oh no, you're way up across the Amazon platforms with all the rest of your brand. I'm like, I can see my dollars, right? Like, right. Yeah. How do you say I'm up 5%? I've got a big business. I'm not up 5%. Right? Like, yes. I don't know. It's so funny. Like, they're just attributing, well, it's how you're attributing the sales on the back end. And I mean, obviously it behooves them to say, hey, we missed here, but you're 5X over here. So,
yeah, we talk a lot about two non-technical things: pure business conflict of interest. We don't have it, right? And two, if you add up all the reported ROIs you've gotten from all your marketing vendors and everybody, it's like 400% larger than your total sales, right? So that you don't need to understand causal multivariate, multi-level modeling. Like, you don't need to understand that. You could just answer those two questions and be like, yeah, that doesn't make sense. Like, that does not add up. And anyone can see that and say, this is not correct, right? This is not incremental. Because I didn't even make that much money last year. Like, that can't be possible. So I think there's a lot of distrust, and there should be. We do best actually with extreme skeptics. Give me a skeptic any day. Because we come out of that university setting where
I was there, right? Because I mean,
when we were talking.
Part of my job is to, for all the brands in network, and we're pushing 9,000 now, right? Is, to make sure if I'm recommending somebody that they've been vetted out. And what helps is there's a big group of people, right, on the advisory board that can help us do that. And then I always like to jump on, but when people are like, no, you have to talk to Meghan, it's like, okay. And I want to see the data, and I want to talk to people. And, but I've been picking your brain a lot. Like, feel free to like pick mine, like anything top of mind for you.
So I would love to know, because, you have this arc of history on the industry and CPG. I know we're mostly talking about CPG today, but just understanding what is the arc of, let's say people have this new tool and they're able to use it. How do you see the industry being able to adapt and actually leverage that, get out of kind of the old ways of doing things, and then move into saying, oh, I can actually operationally use this information? Do you feel like it's a very agile industry that the people can really quickly update with new information and shift budget and shift their approaches? Or do you think that's harder?
Well, I think obviously it's tied to a couple things. If we think CPG, if we think into the OTC pharma space, those are really old companies. They're really, really conservative. And then the other huge CPGs, they're just huge. What are the things, why is it so impactful right now? And why do I think that now's the time is right? There's a variety of things. The economy and money slowing down in two areas. One is the private equity space, which is PE, VC money is not funneling money into all these little, like 150,000 little guys. It's all being consolidated. You have to be, self-funded and profitable, or post-Series A and profitable. And so rather than this money being spread everywhere and everybody just trying to scrape by with just a little bit here or there, we're seeing more money get pulled into tools that actually work. And as that happens, there's fewer, when you think about analysis paralysis, if you're on the digital marketing side and you have 150 tools to choose from, you're not choosing any. Yeah. If you have 4 or 5 that are really, really good, and it doesn't matter which one you pick, it's going to be a winner, right? It's at least, you're not going to get fired for signing with them. Yeah. the other thing is, when you think about the economy and where it's at, well, profitability is huge. And like you're talking about, people want to know where the money's going.
Mm-hmm.
And so those two things, feel two things, is one is tools like yours can actually get up and get rolling and not have to fight off 149 competitors, but maybe only a few. There's money there to totally invest and accelerate if it's needed, because a lot of times these large companies need that, right? They don't want somebody that's 6 months old or a year old. If you're a huge company, you just can't take that risk. And so you've got this interesting dynamic of the pandemic happening, accelerating the importance of digital and paid media spend. We've got data suggesting that we can see, and it does have an impact on retail spend. And you've got all these other things that are swirling around, including an educated executive team now who doesn't know everything, but they've hired really, really smart people who are educating them every day, who are saying, here's what we're going to do. So I just think it's interesting that this would not have happened 2 years ago.
Really?
Wouldn't have
that
happened.
recent, you think, with this?
Everybody's winning 2 years ago in digital.
Yeah.
Everything's up. Money's being spent left and right. But right now, we're at this really, really unique time for new digital tools, tech, things that are power. I mean, the other thing, AI wasn't there. There wasn't the machine learning capabilities. And we're there. And I agree with you. It is going to be a very, very interesting 2 years. When we get 2 years out, 3 years out, we're going to look back, and this is going to seem like when we are looking back to like 2013, 2014.
Yeah, I agree.
That's how fast stuff is changing. People want that. And so it's interesting where you're at right now.
Yeah.
We're at a spot where you can provide it, and it doesn't cost, 400 engineers, to build it. And people really want it. They're educated enough, and there's a huge media spend that now needs to be optimized.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's
awesome.
That's a very helpful perspective. Yeah. And would you say this, like with the rise of retail media, that was because they had a lot of choices before, of course. Do you think that's kind of the icing on the cake of just even further pressure around needing to understand what's working? Because that's been such a recent rise too. Talking to Andrew Lipsman, and just people weren't really even talking about it 5-6 years ago at all in the same way.
Yeah, I mean, you think even at that time, Amazon was still, oh, that's a cute little thing over in the corner, right?
Yeah.
Those are the e-com teams. Oh, you're dealing with Amazon. Oh, that's cute. Now it's massive. And, everybody's got a retail media arm now. I was joking with Lauren. I think Piggly Wiggly's got a retail media.
Oh, really? Yes, yes. We've spoke to a few retailers, actually, because we have a few retail customers, more regional retailers, and they're interested in the incremental ROI of their offering so that they can better sell them, actually.
And so they're trying to pull from all these brands now in requiring a retail media spend because they saw people just pumping money into Amazon.
Yeah.
What'd be interesting from your side is if you can step in there and say, hey, listen, your retail media network, to try to build it out, your ROI on that is probably 5 to 6 years. If you were to just tell your brands to invest in Amazon, you're going to, the break-even point, if they're spending there because of the incrementality that ends up here, actually in store, it might be 7 to 10 years. Do you really want to do this or not? Because what brands are being faced with is, where do I spend my money? And that was Amazon. And then it was kind of Walmart. And then all of a sudden Target, right? And then everybody.
Kroger. Yeah. 84.
Fire. Like everybody wants retail media. It's so it just the rise of that, of saying, hey, now it's pay to play. You can't unless you give me these retail media dollars. And it's not driving a huge uptick. I mean, it is on Walmart in the CPG space. If you're in a typical grocery run, you can see some. But if you're a belts, if you're apparel, it's really hard to get any kind of return on the Walmart platform right now.
Yeah.
But they're still asking for money, and that's the tough thing, right? Is they're still asking for money. And
and it's that relationship.
They can go in their data and say, hey, listen, Walmart, I spent $1 million. I spent $10 million and I got nothing.
Yeah.
Find a better way to spend this $1 million. 10 million.
Yeah.
Find a better way to spend it together. Discounts, in-store displays, end caps. I'll give free TVs to people, right?
Let's optimize your envelope. Like, even if we don't change your envelope. Yeah. That's what essentially, it being at that edge of looking comparatively. I mean, for a lot of customers, we currently look at halo effects of Amazon, Walmart Media Company, and Kroger 8451. Those are the top 3 that we currently measure, and we can measure pretty much any of them that provide data. And it is being taken right now by those senior execs into those meetings to say, here is what our data says. Don't tell me, bless your heart, as we would say in the South, to Kroger 8451 or Walmart Media Company. I love your ROI that you're giving me. It's in isolation. You have a conflict of interest. Like, great. Thank you. Here's my incremental ROI across retail media platforms. And so do better, right? How can we spend this money better and even change their assortment of what they're buying from that retail media network, right? Because it could be just how it's so new. I'm not sure they know even what the best recipe is. I know they don't know what the recipe is to optimize within the retail media network. But you're right. It would be so interesting. I don't know if anyone would go for that, to say, hey, the halo effects look much stronger on Amazon ads. So do you want to just drive more sales, or do you want to be able to report to your boards and everything that you're growing your retail media network revenue arm? Because I think that there's probably enormous internal pressure and political pressure to have the promise of that revenue stream continue to grow. So I don't know if they would want to listen to us about that.
Yeah, probably not.
It's a great. I like the idea, though.
The whole team who's built it out, and that's their job and their goal for the year. Like, we're doing a retail media network. I just don't know if it's the right thing. And it's not to say those dollars are going away. It's just, we're not going to force people to spend dollars on something that's not helping them or us.
Right. And you would argue that, the rise of more competition in retail media is actually good for the brands, because then they can be more discerned. There's more pressure on them to provide reporting. I heard a lot of complaints about different retail media networks that basically report almost nothing, and that's not Walmart, that's not Kroger, that's not Target, but that's some of the lower level ones that are newer ones. And I heard we had brands come to us say, can you go help them with their reporting? And we're like, well, that's not really our business model currently. I'm sure they're working on it. We're here for it. But I think there's pressure. It's not just one game in town. And to your point, I think that is only pressure mounting with more and more competition. Brands only have so much money to spend on this stuff, so they have to optimize it. Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah.
So what are you most excited about as we get kind of the end of this episode here?
Yeah.
Most excited about?
What I'm most passionate about is a very human aspect of how this changes things, which is seeing a group of people, of leadership, of stakeholders come together and get super surprised by insights that we deliver and then change because of it. And it's a very powerful moment. It's been my whole career in whatever country I've worked with, whatever group of people, with whatever government, for whatever objective. It's seeing the moment where people stop, are like, oh, my hypothesis was wrong, and then get excited because that presents opportunity. And it presents sort of the promise of the unknown and doing better based on data and getting out of our status quo kind of day to day, but being curious, seeing a team go to curiosity and evidence-based performance is what I feel most passionate about. And I view all these tools, AI, computing power, love it. We're using and harnessing some components of it, not in the same buzzwordy way that everybody is, but for what makes sense for what we're doing. But I'm excited about that moment where it gets put to use. That's what tech is there for, in my opinion. It's not there just to be cool or to be on podcasts and talk about it, although I know you have lots of people talking about it, and they should. But it's really about how do we leverage it for something better, to make people feel better in their jobs, to serve consumers better. This is a service. I know we're making money, but it's also like bringing them the highest, best goods. And that should be our That's my mission. I love that moment. I think.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Meghan, thanks so much for your time today. This has been absolutely fantastic.
Thank you.
You're going to crush it. You're going to keep crushing. I hear only great things. And so everybody, Meghan Corroon at Clerdata, you can probably reach out to her on LinkedIn. We'll probably have her back for sure. Another episode of the Digital Deep Dive here in the future. I want to, at some point in time, we'll just do a complete data crunch. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, let's do it.
We're going to wrap up this episode of the Digital Deep Dive. Thanks everybody for listening in.
Thanks, Aaron.